Have you ever thought about buying a plot of land? Imagine finding a piece of ground for sale at a very reasonable price, right in the middle of a suburban neighbourhood. What could go wrong? Well, a couple of weeks back, I was contacted by someone who had bought not one, but two such plots at auction. If you've watched the channel before, you know I offer consultations to anyone in the UK looking to develop property, whether it's to alter their own place, or they want to buy a house with the intention of extending it, or they're looking to build a dream home and want my opinion on a plot of land. This client had gone ahead and bought both plots at auction and then contacted me afterwards to see what he might be able to do with the land. Now, this broke my first rule of property development. Always take professional advice before purchasing anything. The plots didn't come with planning permission, they were sold as seen, but to be fair, he paid just over £6,000 for both of them, so it wasn't a vast sum of money. Even experienced property developers get their fingers burned speculating on land. If you've never done this before, it can be a massively risky and expensive process, so please, talk to someone like me before you buy anything. So let's look at these two plots of land from my perspective as an architect. What opportunities and risks can I see here? I'm not going to give away the exact locations, so let's call them Plot 1, which is in Bolton, and Plot 2, which is in Oxfordshire. First problem with Plot 1, it has some nice trees on the site. This means someone will need to check if there are tree preservation orders, but even if there aren't, getting them removed requires permission, and that takes time and the outcome is uncertain. Next problem, and this one is a doozy. Two neighbouring houses appear to have their driveways across this plot of land. I checked on Google Street View and they don't seem to have alternative means of accessing the public road. This means that Plot 1 might have a legal right-of-way written into its title deeds. Even if a right-of-way is not present, I can't see my client getting permission to block in the other properties. This is almost like a reverse ransom strip. A regular ransom strip, in case you don't know, is a narrow strip of land between a site and the public road. The strip of land is of no use on its own. It only becomes valuable if the owner of the site wants to develop their land, but they can't access the public road unless they buy that otherwise useless strip of land from the other guy. If a strip of land is blocking access, the owner of that strip can demand ludicrous money, hence why it's called a ransom strip. Yes, ransom strips are legal and surprisingly widespread. Well, this one operates the other way around. Plot 1 can access the public road, but any attempt to build over those two driveways would almost certainly fail because it would block an established property. The new owner of Plot 1 can't argue that the existing houses should have to build alternative access points. That argument just won't work. You can't develop a site at the expense of a neighbouring property. It might be feasible to build something convoluted to span over the driveways or a small narrow box on the end of the site, but not a conventional house, that's for sure. Even then, the existing junction will have a visibility splay which can't be built over, as it would block the view of oncoming traffic when a driver is trying to exit this junction. So the amount of ground which could be developed on Plot 1 looks to be very limited. Next up, Plot 2. At first glance, this one looks more promising. It has some trees, but they aren't mature, so are unlikely to be an issue if the owner wanted to remove them. There's a public footpath running along the back of the site, and some research would have to be done to work out if this has a right-of-way or whether it could be rerouted. There is a footpath on the other side of the road, so this one could probably be removed without massive inconvenience to local residents. The narrow part of the site is also right next to private rear gardens, so that area is probably not the best place to develop. It would overlook and/or overshadow these gardens, and a narrow structure is probably not worth the effort. That leaves the thicker end of the site, up here. It's about 6 or 7 metres across and right next to the gable of this house. It's the best bet for building a useful structure without adversely impacting the neighbours. Aside from the site being very narrow, the main thing that jumps out at me is the proximity of these two existing road junctions. I think the visibility splay from this junction should be 2.5 metres deep and 70 metres long. It will cross the top end of the plot, but not by much. The main problem will be the road access from the site. You see, no matter what you want to build, it will need vehicular access to the public road. Permanent parking on street would almost certainly be a problem because it leads to congestion, so off-street parking would be the only way to go. But that leads to a problem of public safety. Those cars will have to join the public road driving in a forward gear, and the proximity of these two junctions, one on each side of the road, massively complicate this. You see, there are rules about the proximity of junctions, and because of this, I seriously doubt it will be possible to create a driveway accessing the road from plot 2. The client suggested he might consider a small shop or cafe rather than a house on either of his plots, but this creates extra traffic problems with deliveries and customers. That traffic could be classified as a nuisance, and the planners might refuse an application because of the disruptions a commercial premises would cause both to road users and local residents. I should also point out that my consultations are only available for domestic projects. I don't get involved in commercial jobs like cafes or shops. That requires expertise which I just don't have. So what to do? I'm not saying these sites are 100% impossible to develop. I think plot 1 could probably be developed with a small but very innovative design. Plot 2 would have to negotiate access to the public road before anything else could be considered. I am surprised the owners of these houses didn't buy the site and just make their gardens larger. This guy probably stands a good chance of extending his house onto this land if he owned it. The sellers didn't do anything wrong. As far as I can see, these plots of land were advertised correctly. Ordinarily, I would be able to advise on the best way forward when buying a property, how to find the right local architect, what kind of permissions you will need, and which design ideas might be the best value for money. Because I wasn't able to give help to this owner, I gave them a refund. But they gave me permission to discuss this with you guys and said I should ask anyone who can help develop these plots to get in touch with their own ideas. The easiest way would be for you to DM me on Instagram. I'll put a link in the description. So what have we learned? First off, if a plot of land which is physically large enough to accommodate a house is for sale for way below the going rate, there will be a reason for this. As they say, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Keep in mind, the UK has exceptionally high house prices and a well-developed property market with experienced developers, surveyors, architects and builders always on the lookout for plots with potential to make a profit. If one comes to market like this, you can bet the pros have already had a look and aren't interested. Never make an offer on a property without taking advice beforehand. You can book a consultation with me on the reallifearchitect.co.uk website at short notice. I'm always happy to take a look and give you my feedback. I'll put a link in the description below. It's not unusual to find plots of land which form access to other properties. Get a lawyer to check the title deeds of the plot you are buying and also the deeds of the neighbouring properties. Mature trees can pose a significant problem for development. Always check for tree preservation orders. Mundane things like access to the road, gas, water, electricity and sewers can kill a development dead. You will need professionals to assess these for you. And most importantly, if you are a developer like this client, is the financial yield. You can probably work out the sale or rental value yourself, but what will it cost to build? That isn't an easy thing to work out, even for the pros. There is a process to go through. If you're considering a consultation with me, please read the terms and conditions before you book. My name is Neil, and I have been a self-employed architect in the UK since 2009. I regularly make videos about the reality of altering and extending private homes, as well as issues affecting the construction industry and the architecture profession. If you like the sound of that, please subscribe.